Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Steve Buscemi hosts a 20th anniversary tribute to 9/11 this Sunday at the National Memorial Day concert. I spoke with Buscemi about his deep connection to New York firefighters, as well as the 25th anniversary of Fargo and the 20th anniversary of his Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Steve Buscemi. Thanks so much for joining us on WTOP. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
We're talking because you'll be taking part in the National Memorial Day concert, Sunday, May 30th. Is this your first time for this event?
Well, I went to D.C. Almost 20 years ago. It was the year after 9/11, and I was asked to do the 9/11 tribute then because they knew that I'm a former firefighter with Engine 55 in Manhattan. So now here we are 20 years later, and I'm not actually going to D.C. I've pre-taped my tribute at Ground Zero at the, in front of the Freedom Tower and where the 9/11 museum is. So I'm very honored to be doing it again in this important year, and also to be honoring veterans. My dad fought in Korea, and my cousin Anthony Buscemi, he made the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, and so his name is on the Vietnam War Memorial. So for all those reasons, it's very meaningful for me to be a part of the Memorial Day concert.
Wow, that's going to be very powerful at Ground Zero. As a former fireman in Manhattan, take me back to that day when that happened. I mean, the rest of us, public, just civilians, none of us will forget. It still feels like yesterday. You close your eyes, you still see that horrific day, but it must have hit totally differently for you as a former fireman. What was it like that day knowing your fellow brothers were rushing up there and many of them wouldn't make it out?
It was awful. It was, knowing that it was those buildings and how many people work there and how many people were that we lost in the building, that was so overwhelming. It was really hard to comprehend. And it wasn't until I started hearing the numbers of firefighters that were missing that it hit home for me, because now I could, I knew that I would know people that were lost. So the next day, on September 12th, I was able to get down to the site and work with my old company, Engine 55, and I did that for the next few days. And it was a privilege to work alongside them and also to be there to just witness the humanity, in the face of the, greatest evil, to see all of these people come together, first responders, steel workers, sanitation workers, all the volunteers and the Red Cross. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it really, if only every day from here on out, it could have been like 9/12. I mean, 9/12, you saw the best of this country coming together. And, so many people enlisted right after 9/11. And, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan going forward in the 20 years since. But talk about how this event is, not only a tribute to those we lost on 9/11, but to those who enlisted right after.
Well, I think, I do wish we can get back to that feeling of that it wasn't just New York that was hit. It was this country, and so many people stepped up and volunteered and joined the service. And regardless of what your politics are or what you think about wars and conflicts that this country has been involved in, I think we really have to support our service members because they're doing it for love of their country, and I think that's important. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up about the first responders and firefighters is that since 9/11, I've been working with a group called Friends of Firefighters that provides free mental health services to firefighters, active and retired, and their families. It was started by Nancy Carbone, who saw a need in the firefighting community, which has been so important, because a lot of firefighters and first responders, after what they went through, suffered from post-traumatic stress, survivor's guilt, and then, of course, 9/11 related cancers. This past year with COVID, that added more stress. And now we have the anniversary of 9/11, 20 years, so there's going to be a lot of attention on that, and it's going to be a trigger for a lot of our first responders. So I think now more than ever, we really need to step up and provide them with the help that they need. Our firefighters and first responders are so good at helping others, but they're not always adept at even knowing how to help themselves. And this is where, we as the public can really step up. So if people are interested, they can go to friendsoffirefighters.org and learn more about the organization, and if you can, to donate. It would be much appreciated, and it would go a long way.
Yes, friendsoffirefighters.org. They stepped up big time back then and every day, really. So it's time we step up, too. All right, cool. Well, I know we're up against the clock, but I did want to real quick on a completely different note. This year is the 25th anniversary of Fargo, arguably your most iconic role. I just think it's such a masterpiece. You can go back and look at that thing, how the Coens shoot William H. Macy through those vertical blinds like jail bars, or, Francis as Marge's pregnant cop sort of flipping that gender dynamic with Norm. There's so many things, but why do you think that movie still resonates, man?
It's the Coen brothers. The writing is so good, and of course, Frances McDormand's performance in it, she's the real heart of the movie. And that's what I love about it. It has their dark sensibility and their, dark humor. But then you have Frances's character that sort of counterbalances that. And, of course, I think all the performances, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, total silence. Very funny looking. You nailed it, man. You sound pretty good for having been through a wood chipper. Do people still bring that up to you all the time?
It hasn't happened lately, but it's happened enough in the past, or, especially when people say that that's their favorite scene. And I say, okay, I actually wasn't in that scene, but okay, thank you.
Right, that was someone else's prop foot there. Yeah, they loved your performance as the prosthetic leg. Well, you know what? I'm sure you picked up some stuff from the Coens with that, snow-covered, dark comedy, because this month, May, 20 years ago, was you directing Pine Barrens of Sopranos. Christopher and Paulie Walnut's hilarious out there chasing that Russian in the snow. But how rewarding was it for, after all those great acting roles, you got to actually direct? And, all these years later, people say that might be the best episode in the entire show, and it's you, man.
Well, listen, it was Terry Winter wrote that episode, and of course all the writers, David Chase, he had a hand in every episode writing it, and the story came from one of my favorite directors on that show, Tim Van Patten. He was the one that came up with the story. It fell to me to direct it, and I was just so lucky, because any of those regular directors would have knocked it out of the park, because the script was just so good. Those actors were just amazing, and I felt, lucky that I was the one to get to do it, and it was so much fun, and I'm really happy that I was able to be a part of that show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for indulging us with a couple Sopranos and Fargo. we could do there's Armageddon, Reservoir Dogs, so many, but the reason we're here, everybody, is the 9/11 20th anniversary tribute at the Memorial Day concert on Sunday. So hey, thanks so much, Steve Buscemi, and thanks for all you've done, and highlighting the firefighters and everyone we lost that day. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and all the best to you and your listeners.
All right, thanks. Steve Buscemi on WTOP. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.